당한수 아디샤게 램파도 와도 갈갈은 루고아르스 말베. 다른 주도 몸페이지 투쳐나운스.
So we've been going over the text by the great master Atisha, the lamp for the path to enlightenment, and many people have come today, so thank you so much.
Tene 아디샤게 라리디시라 개쳐버려서 사제근 도당하 티제 팀에게 nenga 용수 주바도 가서 강가로 아디샤가 라린 뒤디오아레스.
So we can find in an abbreviated fashion or a condensed form in this particular text on the stages of the path by the great master Atisha all of the concise meanings of Sutra and Tantra, all of the meanings of the Hinayana schools and the Mahayana schools and their divisions and so forth. So we can see that in an abbreviated format, this text encompasses all of the teachings that were given by the Lord Buddha in an implicit manner.
다디샤글랑리든 도당 하다 티젠다 테메 와도수기 가서 고기 셰하게 데미기 쏘다들스 아디샤글랑리디 아버시바이나 도당 하 티젠 테메 차성을 갈래갈래 셰웅하지 있어서.
So if we're able to ascertain the true meaning of this text, the lamp for the path to enlightenment, and able to understand the stages of the path to enlightenment, then we're able to extract the concise meanings of Sutra and Tantra and the concise meanings of Hinayana and Mahayana and what differentiates them from each other. So by studying this particular text and engaging in an in-depth analysis, we're able to come out the other side of that reflection with a true, solid understanding of these topics.
다 사제기 도당하다 티제 테메도 수가 레바데 안 자가게 되네 난간요나라 수바다 안 상가라 수비는 개바도 저기 네 버자게 nenga 용수 주바 아디샤나린 레디오아레스.
So, and even the great masters such as Nagarjuna, the great Indian pandits such as Nagarjuna and Asanga and their lineages of teachings have made it to the great master Atisha, and he includes all of their commentaries and the descriptions of these various topics from their commentaries in his Lamrim because of his combining the concise meanings of these two lineages.
어제 다드네 다나가서 메일로 내자와치고 투네 요아레 메기 센디시다가 짱보레 던데그 투레는 가서 추역이 두슨 양len지 춘양len지 바이나 네바치고 용그레스.
At this point, we have a human basis. We have a human basis which possesses a human mind, and this human mind that we possess has so many abilities and so many possibilities. So if we wish to engage in religious practice or we wish to follow a dharmic practice, here the word is, translators note, similar for religion and dharma. If we wish to engage in practice of religion or dharma, then we will have the ability to do so because of the vast qualities of the human mind that we possess, because if we possess a human form, we necessarily possess a human mind.
Tene 가서 그래 제단다 사지가 리데 아니 밀들류데 안 세제 다지를 사지가 리기 쳐요아레스 안 가서 추유두스 냐레지바이나 아니 세제 그걸로 사지야게 뇌바요아레스.
All sentient beings possess what is called the Buddha potential or Buddha nature. It does not matter what particular realm they abide in. It has been stated by the Buddha that all sentient beings possess Buddha nature or Buddha lineage or Buddha potential. It's translated as all these three things. So we have the potential because of the fact that we are sentient beings to achieve that same possibility.
안는 가마 사지도서 가서든 지바레스 담보 구슬 동에 요아레 안는 고알 코디오아레스 안는 콘줄 사지가 리드 요에다 최냐레 제는 가시 다종발 루아레 가시 하다 메이 대장 루아레 가시 사지 루아레스 사지가 리드 요에다 안테 용고아레스 리메나 용아요 마레스.
So it's because of this that through engaging in studies and practices that one is able to abandon the various types of suffering that they previously had to endure, and able to achieve the state of foe destroyer because of these practices, religious practices, foe destroyer or arhat, able to achieve a rebirth into the three higher realms, are able to abandon the rebirth in the lower realms, and able to achieve also finally unsurpassable true complete enlightenment of the Buddha, But if one does not possess the lineage of the Buddha, then it's not possible to achieve Buddhahood. So it's necessary to engage in the practices which are of the lineage of the Buddha in order to achieve the result of Buddhahood.
어제 땅 아술 손지 리요아르 세제 단지를 손지 리기 쳐도요 레이드 가르스 저구스 라바이나 안는 가서 이지셰바 이지셰바들 이지셰바던 튼다 로시니요 이지셰바던 튼 어디서 근걸로 사지 리레스 그 최단지 제약은 누바요아르스 단다 시 녀모바드 시 리바 리드레마도 네 최단지 제약은 누바요아레 녀모바드 시 리바 다소나 안는 가서 그거 생도 아미시 차려요아르스.
So all sentient beings possess Buddha nature and possess the potential to become all-knowing and to possess the potential to completely destroy the afflictions and the obstructions to omniscience which inhibit he or she from becoming a Buddha. So it's possible to assert that all sentient beings have Buddha nature or Buddha potential because of the fact that they necessarily possess a mental consciousness. And this mental consciousness is imbued with both correct consciousness and mistaken consciousness. And once the afflictions and so forth, which fall into the category of mistaken consciousness, and the obstructions to omniscience and the afflictive obstructions are eradicated, then one has the ability to achieve the state of Buddhahood or achieve the state of all-knowing omniscience. The reason that at this point we do not possess omniscience or the state of all-knowing is because we still have the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience because they have not been eradicated. But the mental consciousness possesses the potential to have either mistaken or correct consciousness. And once all of the mistaken consciousness is eradicated, then the only thing that is left is correct consciousness. And this is why this is one reason for the assertion that all sentient beings possess Buddha nature or Buddha potential.
다 생득의 거드 야부드바이나 덴도당 타바당 사제든 로그레스 생득 디바 도스 몸사바이나 안능에 손을 줘야지 사지고 어떤 손도 그랬어.
It has been stated by the Buddha, or pronounced by the Buddha, that if one engages in virtuous deeds, then that will lead he or she to happiness, will lead he or she to a rebirth in the gods and the demigods, the human realms and the higher realms. But if one engages in misdeeds or negative actions, then those types of activities lead one to a rebirth in the lower realms of the hells, hungry ghosts, and animals.
Saint Daba Najiris, Daba, Motatangi, Motatu Kalu Kabat Jujuro, Saint-Gi, and then Dundutang and Rukabando, and Saint Jurors, Saint.
So the mind is very similar to the driver of a car. The driver of a car decides which way one will go. Likewise, the mind decides what type of activities the being that the mind is driving will engage in, and those activities will produce either a rebirth into the higher realms or rebirth into the lower realms, depending on the nature of those actual activities.
다 사지 칸소분은 생장모스 든도당년도 코아당 안에 장애가 최근 걸로 생그 줘버리스 어디 송거리스
야저스라마
다 가서 그래 코아당 타바당 어디 사지가 송거리스 칸소분은 생장모스 칸소분 디자이어랑 말베 어디 칸소분 걸로 수요버리스 생그 줘버리스 생그 쉐버리스.
Okay. So when asked the question, what created the three different realms, the three realms of the desire realm, the form realm, and the formless realm, the Buddha stated that the mind created these three realms.
And
then there are different views in different religions that state that, oh, there has been a creator God of some sort that created these realms. But as Buddhists, we believe that the mind created these things. We believe that a mind created these things.
어제 다드네 가지고래 당아서 추추루거레스 추추루는 가르용하여 거레스 대바이나 아는 가서 대화 세제 건가 대화도 거래 등에도 거 말레스 추도 루바이나 대화 용거레스 선다다 샤마다 마을 대화 용거레스 대인도 추루거레스 디바사나 동해 용거레스.
So what happens if one engages in dharmic practice or religious activities? Well, these religious activities will lead one to a state of happiness which is free from suffering, because one realizes that all sentient beings wish to have happiness. All sentient beings wish to be free from suffering. So it's necessary to find the causal factors for the production of happiness in order to achieve it. So when one investigates this, one will find that in order to achieve happiness in this life and in future lives, it's necessary to engage in religious practice or dharmic practice. So we need to look no further than this for the achievement of happiness in this life and in future lives. It's dependent upon our activities.
어제 당아서 가서 그래 셔망내 손을 집어 있는 가서 가봐요 말이스. 하도 멀리 집어 있는 가서 집어요 가봐요 말이스. 가봐요 봤나지. 근데 산지게 내손 동에 까네 하도 멀리하게 더 가서 말이스나. 안에 건조손을 저손 누구는 렌데 아부손 디발 샤동 아버지나 할지 그래 멀지 그래 집어요 거레스. 어디서 말이스. 아디샤나는 곳들에 집어 종우세도 어디레스.
So at the beginning of the text, the Atisha's Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, we can find where he describes what is called a being of least capacity, or a being of lesser capacity. So if one achieves rebirth in the higher realms as opposed to the lower realms, then there would be a great deal more happiness in the higher realms. So if a being wishes to abandon the causal factors for the rebirth into the lower realms so that he or she may achieve in future lives rebirth into the higher realms, then it's necessary for there to be a method in order to achieve these results. And the Buddha stated that the method to achieve the result of a rebirth into the higher realm in future lives is by relying upon a very steady and stable refuge in the three jewels, an understanding of the law of karma and its effects, or actions and their effects, and a very large amount of perseverance relative to the acknowledgement of downfalls or confession. So these three things together are what has been stated by Buddha to allow one to be born into the higher realms. And this is one who has the motivation to be born into the higher realms and engages in these activities is called the being of least capacity. And this can be found at the beginning of the text.
다 사지도 멤버라 버스. 사지도 멤버라 버지. 네, 제부 중요 최도 멤버 버스. 상제라 저선 루고네 상제가 송바나지 정도다 렌데나 디발 샤나 야버제바이나 안는 내송고 동엘 타는 할다말 루고.
So the Buddha is very similar to a doctor giving out a prescription. The Buddha can state that if you engage in these practices of a stable refuge and the understanding of karma and its effects and acknowledgement of downfalls, then you will be able to eradicate the rebirth into the lower realms, and you will not have to experience those sufferings of the lower realms, and you will be able to be born into the higher realms. So this is very similar to a diagnosis that a doctor does, and then a prescription of medication in order to alleviate whatever type of suffering the patient is complaining about. Likewise, the Buddha has given us a pathway to out of the lower realms, so it's very similar to a doctor giving medicine to eradicate an illness. Here the illness is the rebirth into the lower realms, and the medicine being the practice.
제본딘도 통일라리 되고르스 타도 멀리지바 이나야 안에 제가 나시 동에 요아르스 동에지 동에 주의 동에 차반도 주의 동에 워트 동에드네 타도 멀리 요아르스 코아도 마부바드시도 안에 동에를 타요 말스 동에를 타 안에 그 동에를 타 터도 가르치고 제본딘도 통일라지바 안에 추진지 라바다 땡간지 라바다 셔라지 라바손 라비 추데 제바니발 레고르스 제본딘도 통일라지바.
So the second level that is explained in Atisha's Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment in the stages of the path is called teachings that are shared in common with beings of medium capacity. And just from before, the other is also called teachings shared in common with beings of small capacity. So the previous explanation can be called that as well. So this is called teaching shared in common with beings of medium capacity, or teachings for being of medium capacity. So this second level is a being who recognizes not only the suffering of the lower realms, but also recognizes that in the higher realms of the gods, the demigods, humans, there is still suffering. He or she recognizes that wherever one is in cyclic existence, if one is abiding in cyclic existence, then he or she is necessarily experiencing suffering, because cyclic existence, suffering pervades cyclic existence. So then he or she recognizes that the higher realms still have to endure the suffering of meeting with the unpleasant and being separated from meeting with the unpleasant and being separated from the pleasant, the suffering, the suffering of change, the pervasive compounded suffering, the suffering of birth, aging, sickness, and death. So all of these types of suffering, this medium scope practitioner recognizes and wishes to definitely get out of them, and wishes to definitely get out of them in order to achieve liberation or nirvana. So this type of being is called a being of medium capacity, and these teachings are called teachings shared in common with beings of medium capacity or middling capacity. So what is the method for this type of practitioner? The method that he or she must employ is the three higher trainings: the higher training in ethics, the higher training in concentration, and the higher training in wisdom. So these three need to be combined in order for the medium scope practitioner to eradicate the causal factors for all of cyclic existence, so that he or she is out of the cycle altogether and can achieve the state of nirvana for him or herself, alone.
Dane kuyu dunga dusu jukangla dene shungwaris dunga denpa po nipa chukunan dunga denpa rawa. Ta jukangla dene shungwaris na le dan nyomobi kunjungla dene shungwaris. Ti juya tusuna denzil tu yuwaris. Chuna denpa chuban zibi denzin. Denzin ki jushe wala dene nyomo jene le saane. Ane ruwari rul kun dunga nyungdu guwaris. Ane kuyu dunga de pongba la, ane denzin delusion de mabongba do kuyu dunga pong tongu yuwaris. Denzin de bombala toni to be shera yenji meji gogores toni to be shera johnson denzil nyebun dogres toni la mi bitinga je johnsona ne toni to be shera nebache bcha nogres chuti lhaba de go sheba ina de nebache bcha ne ani nyemo bata ne donge tsa ne pon tabat yajige ani ne chu woden ji ngosres.
So when we look at the suffering and we look at the causal factors of suffering, we need to look at the Four Noble Truths. We see that the first of the Four Noble Truths is called the truth of suffering, and the second is called the truth of origin of suffering. So the truth of suffering is the suffering that one has to endure that was previously explained, the suffering, etc., suffering of change, and so forth. So these types of suffering must have a cause. Then that leads us to the second noble truth, the truth of origin. And what is the true, complete origin of the suffering which causes one to be propelled into cyclic existence? What is the root causal factor of cyclic existence? The root causal factor of cyclic existence is the grasping at true existence, or the grasping at true establishment. So if one can eradicate the grasping at true establishment or grasping of true existence, then the afflictions and the actions and so forth, which this actual mistaken view creates, will no longer be created. And if this takes place, then one is able to be free altogether from this truth of suffering, because the origin of suffering has been eradicated. But one cannot just do this by having a wish for this to happen. It's necessary to have a wisdom, and this wisdom is the wisdom realizing emptiness. But one cannot have wisdom realizing emptiness unless he or she has single-pointed concentration, which uses as its object of observation emptiness. So the single-pointed concentration, which utilizes as its object of observation emptiness, then allows one to have the wisdom realizing emptiness. But it's not possible to have concentration without ethics. So this is why we see that this triangle of topics is necessary in order for one to achieve the state of liberation, because one must have the ethics or the ethical behavior in order to produce the concentration. This concentration must be a concentration or single-pointed concentration which utilizes as its object of observation emptiness. And then by doing so, one can achieve the state of wisdom, which is the wisdom realizing emptiness. And these things serve as an antidote to the mistaken view of the grasping at true existence. Once the grasping at true existence has been eradicated, then what it produces can no longer be produced, and that is cyclic existence.
Chuna deba drupa zime denzi taba drut zime lo ndraboris, lo lo shiris. Taba dru ma imba shesuna, taba drut zime lo dul nönduwas. Den naji chuna deba ma drupa tishesuna, deba drupa zime denzi nyebun druwaris.
It's very similar to a mistaken view that one sees when he or she enters a dark room and mistakes a rope for a snake. If that mistaken view is present, then all sorts of emotions and so forth relative to this occur, fear and so forth. But once one recognizes that it's just a rope, then none of these other things can take place. Likewise, once one recognizes that things are not truly established, then the grasping at true existence or grasping at true establishment is eradicated. And then this antidote to the mistaken view serves as the antidote to the root of cyclic existence and the afflictions and actions that it produces.
Tawa lhaba sonde yabajun, labi lhaba sonde yabajun ba ina dongen tsawa npun taba tutu waris, liberation di yungu waris. Ina ya nyomo bi bacha denzin ki bacha mabu na tangje chenpa cha tuku maris. Tangje chenpa cha bala ane shangchu ki sen lo jang waris.
So if we have these highest higher trainings, translators note for those who are new, highest higher training because it's specific to the Buddhist view, and you can ask others afterwards if you're curious why it's called highest higher training. So the three highest higher trainings can produce liberation because they have the ability to eradicate the afflictive obstructions, but they cannot produce complete Buddhahood. Just reliance upon the three higher trainings alone will not produce Buddhahood, will not produce omniscience. And the reason for this is that the afflictive obstructions have been eradicated, but their imprints are still present. Their imprints are called the obstructions to omniscience. And in order to eradicate the obstructions to omniscience, which are the imprints of the predispositions that were previously left, are the imprints of the afflictions that are still lingering, in order to eradicate those, one must have bodhicitta, or the mind that aspires to enlightenment. So one must not only have the three higher trainings, but also add bodhicitta in order to eradicate those imprints of the afflictive obstructions.
Oje Lamrim reba somba de maya na shangchu sen lo jang chu tle de goris marba shangchu sen lo jang na shangchu sen ge zhu she bi dongni du bi she ra ne ba chibun du goris denzi ba chal ne bun du goris marba.
So in the third, the somba, rib somba.
So the
third level, which is the great scope, or the teachings for beings of great capacity, relies upon bodhicitta. And there's an explanation of this mind that aspires to enlightenment, because it goes through the different trainings in ethics and concentration and the wisdom realizing emptiness, but then states that it's in order to achieve complete Buddhahood, bodhicitta is indispensable on the path. So then the section goes into how one achieves and maintains the mind that aspires to enlightenment, or bodhicitta, in order to eradicate the obstructions to omniscience, to achieve the state of all-knowing that a Buddha has.
Da shangchu sen lo jang bi cui junzhe menga dunji gu ne lo jang bi cui dang da jen nyaba ji yu gu lo jang bi cui ni yu gu res marba. Ten ni ji gu ne an shangchu sen yu li je song na teba chenpo cha no res.
So if one wishes to generate this mind that aspires to enlightenment, then there are two causal factor lineages for this achievement, or two instructional lineages for achieving the state of the mind that aspires to enlightenment. And translators note, the mind that aspires to enlightenment is synonymous with bodhicitta and Mahayana mind generation. So all of these three things mean exactly the same thing. So if one wishes to achieve these, the instructions are given, passed down from the Lord Maitreya to a Sangha called the 7-point cause and effect for achieving bodhicitta. The second lineage of instruction passed from excuse me, Manjushri to Nagarjuna is called equalizing and exchanging self with others. So here are two causal lineages for the achievement of Mahayana mind generation or bodhicitta, and once one generates bodhicitta, then he or she is a Mahayanist or is practicing Mahayana. Once you have bodhicitta, you're a Mahayanist. So once one generates bodhicitta, or the mind that aspires to enlightenment, then there are two vehicles that he or she can choose to engage in, or two paths that he or she can engage in. One is the perfection vehicle, and the second is the esoteric or tantric vehicle. These are both great vehicle teachings.
Oje dat pashin tibi lan lobi sudala sunres labi churin jilaba da tingazi jilaba da shira jilaba lobi chusun jeba jena sis barbajun tele jeba yina pashin cho wad lobi sudale de waris
the lapa sum dang shindu
lapa sum jeba jena dings jena shindu sis barbajun tele jeba yina pashin cho ten barbajun reba
then parshin ju gare lena
that is barbajun tekon ne toju paru dishimba esheji paru dishimba phanlaji paru dishimba dan je tuba jayo dan nga mu tangkhat landi.
Okay. So for someone who is engaging in the perfection vehicle, then he or she practices the 3 higher trainings and also the 6 perfections and also the 10 perfections. So the person who wishes to engage in the course of the perfection vehicle, which falls into the category of the great vehicle, must rely upon these teachings, 3 highest higher trainings, 6 perfections, and the 10 perfections.
Oje tatane churin jilaba dingenze jilaba churin jilaba de karshu ware da ngasu ane lombal tingu nduwas lombal tin police jane lombal tingu tanaji ane sanje ge tin jizores chutin songol chutin yebi tune dingenze de shara laba gomba yina ane yabu yongores what songores.
So any place or any area which is successful or thrives must have law, must have some sort of law that's in place. Likewise, the Buddha stated that ethics are the foundational importance, and ethical behavior is very similar to a law. So this is why it's been stated first that one must have the ethics. Because if one has ethical behavior, then if one wishes to familiarize oneself or wishes to meditate upon the concentration or single-pointed concentration or wisdom, then it becomes possible. So this is why it's been stated that it's necessary to have ethics in order to produce the latter realizations.
What the thing is that chutin jilaba labi chuta dingenze laba labi chuta chinsabar da ngasu hero khatu de duaris.
So we've already gone over the highest higher training in ethics previous classes, and we've already gone over the highest higher training in concentration in previous classes, and we've arrived now at the highest higher training in wisdom, and we've been going over that recently.
Oje tatane shanju chu de senje ne an sanje sal sanje bala thad shera ni go waris thad shera ni men sanje tu maris shadi ji jasu bharu de simbala an shuba ni go no shuba ni le mena ji ma du mena do tu mu dos na ji thashi shuba ni go waris.
It's necessary for one to have, if one wishes to achieve the state of unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment or Buddhahood, it's necessary to have the 2 wings. And here, the 2 wings refer to method and wisdom. And it's stated in the entrance to the middle way, the Madhyamika Avatara by Chandrakirti, that the golden goose must have 2 wings in order to fly over the great ocean. And here, the great ocean refers to cyclic existence. So it's necessary to have both the wings of method and wisdom to transcend and go over to the other side which here, the other side, is a synonym for Buddhahood. And just a translator's note, perfection truly translates as going to the other side, but it doesn't make sense in English, so no one uses that.
What the Jidamba ni, Lang Tashi ni, Drebuku nis, Jil Damba ni, Yuezang True Truth, and then Lang goes Tashi ni, was Taught Shiro. Taught Shiro ni, Yuezang, Drebuku Kosule, Chuku the Zugu ni, on the waters, Maraba.
So when we look at the two truths, and we look at the two accumulations, and we look at the two necessities, the two truths being ultimate and conventional, the two collections being collection of exalted wisdom and collection of merit, and the two necessities being method and wisdom. If one has all of these things together, then one can produce Buddhahood. And what they produce are the two different bodies, the form body and the truth body, or the Robokaya and the Dharmakaya.
What did you touch? Shindu on that taught the Shiro Kanakarazana, Shiro Paru Shinju don't trade Karza, and we are only Jambi in the passing Tomunga de Torres top. Methodist Meterwa, we are soon to do, we are soon to Galo, Shiro, we are so Maimbi and the passing Tamunga, Jimba Tutin Zuba, the Torres, Toyim Jusan Karazna, and the Zogun Rojik Jews or Zogu Jews or in the Torres, and the Amishan Jews or in the Shiros. Do need to be Shirot, Maraba?
Share up Mayimbi Gewa Yina
Shiro Mayimbi Shindu Yoro, Jimba Tutin Losuba to Torres.
Okay. So when we look at the difference between method and wisdom, we look at the difference between accumulation of merit and accumulation of exalted wisdom, we can see that there are 6 perfections. And the first of the 5 perfections fall into the category of the collection of merit or of method. And these, the collection of merit or method produce the form body of the Buddha. And the last perfection, the perfection of wisdom, or the literally going to the other side of wisdom, creates the actual truth body, or the Dharmakaya. So we can see how it splits up. So any virtue, any meritorious activity which one engages in, which lacks wisdom, or which is not wisdom, is necessarily method. So that's how one differentiates between method and wisdom, and the method creates the Robokaya, or the form body, and the wisdom creates the Dharmakaya, or the truth body.
Inchiki Lampa de Jeju Shedin Mazirujis, Jeju Shedin, Pomokanda Jeju. Putti Saman Nombas, Ilish.
Let's go.
Putti Saman. Number Putti Saman.
46. Pombo.
Kantan Jeju.
Okay, so number 47, the Tanda Logo. So number 47, it states, understanding emptiness of inherent existence through realizing that the aggregates, constituents, and sources are not produced is described as wisdom.
Jidang Shiro Mabu, Chukangolo Shibi Shiro Rioris, Yina Shiro Gunane, and two Jabunama the Tuni to Shiro is. What the Hombokanda Jechena, Jawamaba Tujubi, Rajin Tony Shibi Shiro the Shiro is, and Shiro to what there is, what the song was.
So there are many different kinds of wisdom. When one understands any type of phenomena, then this is called wisdom. But the king of wisdom, the real king, is the one that understands emptiness, the wisdom realizing emptiness. So here it says, understanding emptiness of inherent existence through realizing the aggregates, constituents, and sources are not produced is described as wisdom. So here, this is speaking of the root wisdom, the true king of wisdom here. This is not just everyday, normal wisdom like understanding a phenomena.
What you wanted that, should not stand it is. Chutaji tended, Pomponga tended, Tendi is on Deba Madubaris, Deba Maduba should be Shiro de, and 외송레스 외송 이미 주생 가르스나 최소 주권이 전하는 조 최고 투비 주 인자 안에 싫어레스 말봐.
So, by recognizing that that phenomena dependently originate, because phenomena dependently originate, they are necessarily lack true establishment or lack true existence or have no inherent existence because of that dependent origination. So this understanding is what is called wisdom. So understanding that all of these things mentioned here are not truly established because they dependently originate is the type of analysis which leads one to the realization of emptiness, which leads one to the formation of the Dharmakaya or the Chukku, the truth body. I'm thinking in three languages because Chukku is Tibetan, Dharmakaya is Sanskrit, and truth body is obviously English.
Yeah. So in
the Heart Sutra we see the 5 skandhas. Skandhas is Sanskrit. Aggregates is English. It's also called heaps, aggregates. So when we read the Heart Sutra and it says seeing the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature, skandhas is an aggregate. For some reason they chose to be smart and use a Sanskrit word in an English translation. I don't know why. So whenever you see skandha, or you see heap, or you see aggregate, or you see pungbo, that all means the same thing.
So the
mistaken view is that the 5 aggregates themselves have some sort of true establishment. It's very similar to the mistaken view that a rope is a snake. So it's by reversing that and recognizing that the 5 aggregates are a collection and are not truly established is what is called wisdom. So the Buddha has stated this many times in the 100,000 verse Prajnaparamita Sutra, or the 80th trick, the J trick, boom, J trick, ni trick, chi ni, got it.
Boom,
80,000. Okay, so there's the 100,000, the 80,000, the 20,000, and the 8,000 verse Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, and the Buddha has stated this, and that is why Atisha has extracted that from all of those vast texts and stated it here in a concise manner. But we can find a more larger description in these bigger texts.
다 본본가 대바 마루바 시비 셰러드 주지 셰러드로와 셰러드 외송레스 외송 가르치는 외송레스 외송 이미 주생 가르스나 그 주조 주권이 나는 주 최고 도적 주인서 외송레스.
So the subject, the Yanjar Suranan, the Chuj, the
돈이 두비 셰러요로와 본본가 대바 마루바 두비 셰러드 안에 외송 가르치는 외송레스 외송 이미 주생 가르스 리바이나 안에 주조 주권이 나는 주 So what
is the reason that it is the understanding that the 5 aggregates are a collection that come together and are not truly established? What is the reason that this is called wisdom? The reason that this is called wisdom is because this understanding, this realization of the emptiness of the 5 aggregates because of their dependent origination through because of their dependent origination, they lack true establishment. They are only nominally designated. And the reason this is called wisdom is because this type of realization produces the truth body, or the Dharmakaya. So this is the one reason that is stated for it being called wisdom, because of what it produces.
So
the 5 aggregates themselves are conventional truth, fall into the category of mundane truth. But the lack of true establishment of these 5 aggregates is called ultimate truth or super mundane truth.
오아지다 폼봉아데 덴바 마루바 이미 주생 가르스 폼봉아데 덴바 마루바 주생 가르스나 다 땅다 송래 용어르다 줄라줘바 줄라줘바 데블라줘바 ngol라줘바 다 제단 다 돈이 주베 땅다 뭐요 아르스 대나네 다 랑전 거서 조 송송 버르스 송.
So there are many reasons that can be asserted to explain why the five aggregates are not truly established. But here, in this particular text, there are three reasons that are given for their lack of true establishment. Then the sum, the kali kali la.
Tambo kali kali shi
Tambo gare.
Tambo debala juba so marbe.
Debala juba.
Debala juba dat pananga so ane matu jitaba ina matu sun juro sun de matu juro wa. Matu sun ge duso matu was. Matu sal ta chulu jodan kale sun nyugo je was. Nyugo de matu sig duso matu was. 폼방가다 랑게 주유도스 랑게 주유도스 요마레스 랑게 주유도스 매장 랑게 주유도스 네바 마루바레스 랑게 주유도스 요바 데모 마루바레스 랑게 주유도스 매바 데모 마루바레스 랑게 주유도스 요바 데메바 니가 임바 데모 마루바레스 랑게 주유도스 요바 데메바 니가 마임바 데모 마루바 임베 메제데도 메제.
Okay, so when we look at the five aggregates themselves, the first reason that we can give for their lack of true establishment is the fact that they are a result. And if it is a result, it is necessarily dependent upon causal factors. For instance, if we have a flower, it's necessary to have a seed, and it's necessary that seed itself is not a flower. It's necessary to put this seed in the ground and to fertilize it and to water it and to have the appropriate conditions surrounding it, and then eventually that seed will sprout into a flower. But there is no inherently established flower that exists from its own side exclusive of that collection. Likewise, the aggregates themselves are an effect and are dependent upon other factors, and it's because of the fact that they are an effect, they are not caused by themselves. It's it's an awkward but literal translation. Their production are not of its own. So it's not, its production is dependent upon other than its own. So this is one reason given for the emptiness or the lack of true establishment of the five aggregates. Tamche lapsar.
That the Pomonga churches and Digro, that Pomonga Mutu churches and then Digro, Pomonga church, Rangaji to Ayu Merwa, Rangaji to Yomaro, Pomonga Kunoji to Yomudua, Mutu church, Rangaji to Mudua, Sea to Mudua, Pomonga Rangaji to Yomares, Rangaji to Mezan, Rangaji to Meba Demadu Mares. Rangaji to Yoba Demba Madubares, Rangaji to Yoba Demba Niga Imba Demba Madubares, Rangaji to Yoba Demba Niga Maimba Demba Maduba Yinta, Pomonga Demba Madubares, Puna Naki Mudujins.
So we can state that the five aggregates, for instance, the subject, the five aggregates, are not created by themselves. So we can't say that they are truly established because they are created by themselves. But we can also say that we can't say that they are established because they are non-existent, because they are not non-existent. We can't say that they are established because they are existent, because we've already asserted that their existence is brought in, is causal. So we can't state that their existence themselves makes it so that they are truly established. And is there something which is neither that is truly established, which is neither existent or non-existent? And the answer is no. So there is nothing that is non-existent or existent, that is produced or not produced, that can be found to be truly established or truly existent, because everything dependently originates, no matter how you look at it. Even a non-existent entity which one could make up, such as a sky flower.
Oji ta toni gomba de la tene tusanji jine gomba dan anu gonjogu majeba jogons khani yongores ta jusen la tene toni san dan de ba tujung ge shera dan sanjung ge shera zu ngolo jegun la gomba ba jine toni gomba dan majeba gomba ni yongores marbe tusanji jine gomba ane majeba jogons 돈이 고수니 요아레스 말바.
Tony Gom Ni, Jegom Dang Jugom.
조고니.
Then
단다
Salomamo Dan Jegom.
땅달라 때네 돈이 산땅도 제공을해서 말이야 제공 다 돈을 고아 잡아들래 주센을 산도 마땅하지 다가나 주산땅도 조공서 그러 봐.
So there are two types of concentration when we look at meditation itself. And meditation is actually a loaded word. There's no translation connection there. We've made that up in the West. It's called familiarization in Tibetan. So familiarization with this subject is called analytical familiarization. And then when one is not using correct signs or reasoning in order to meditate, then this is called single-pointed familiarization, or single-pointed familiarization. So when we are using analysis or using reasons for the emptiness of this or that, then this type of meditation or this type of familiarization is called analytical familiarization. But if we were to not use reasons and we were to use emptiness as our object of observation and singly without relying upon any sort of conceptuality or reasoning, then this would be called single-pointed familiarization. So just a translator's note, the reason that I want to differentiate that is meditation in the West has an implication that one has their eyes closed and is in a trance almost. But the word in Tibetan is called familiarization. Gom is familiarization. There's no connection to the word we use, meditation. It's just been something that translators have used because it's more mystical sounding. But it really isn't what is meant in the Tibetan at all. The NGK,
여바 저와 리미트 인지기도 여바 저와 리미트 그도 어떤 자산지 로고도 인지 로고 여바 저와 리미트
Jibjijije.
매바 제제제제도 로다 인리시.
So when we arrive at number 48, we see something existent cannot be produced, nor something non-existent, like a sky flower. These errors are both absurd, and thus both of the two will not occur either.
드벌라 제바시비 군데 데바 마루부 따터레스 드버 드벌라 줘바 요멘 중국이 된시스 드버 데바 두마루 제바시비 군데 아네 데바 마루부 두비 따들 요멘 중국이 따양다스 요멘 중국이 된시스 워데 요바 저와리미디스 네 폼봉가드 랑그 주유도 요바 마레스 폼봉가드 랑그 주유도 요 마레 랑그 주유도 매자 아네 여바 데마 마루바레스 랑게 주유도 메바 데마 마루바레스 랑게 주유도 여바 데마 니가 임바 데마 마루바레스 랑게 주유도 여바 데마 니가 마임바 데마 마루바 인자 폼봉가 데마 마루바레스 바나나키 무도진스.
So something existent cannot be produced, nor something non-existent, like a sky flower. These errors are both absurd, and thus both of these two will occur. So here the assertion of true existence is being described like a sky flower, because a sky flower is a non-existent. So when we look at the five aggregates themselves, we cannot say that they are self-created. So we can't say that their self-creation is truly established because it is not truly existent. But we cannot say that it is non-existent. And if it was non-existent, we could not say that it was truly established. And it is existent, but we can't say that it's truly established because of its existence and its production, because its production and its existence is reliant upon other things. And we can't. And there's something which is neither. Is there a way that it could be not existent and not non-existent, but truly established? And the answer is no. So no matter how one looks at it at any angle, one will find that it is not truly established. Whether one looks at its collection prior to it being aggregates or when it comes into being aggregates, none of those things, its production or cessation, are truly established. So that's the point. And the absurdity of believing that things are truly existent is same as believing that a flower could grow in the sky.
다 보면 가지 대바 주비 저하면 대랑거 유도 여바 대바 주비 저하면 매바 대바 주비 저하면 네가 임바 대바 주비 저하면 네가 마임비 대바 주비 저하면 비시 번나 힘도 인시비 다운다를 때네 안 대바 주바 시비 시로들 제바로 그래서 제바서 말베다
Jekpag Sema.
제바서 소로.
So once one engages in this analysis, such as the subject, the five aggregates, are the five aggregates created? Yes. Are they self-created? No. They rely upon something. Is their creation itself non-existent? No, it's existent because there's a creation that takes place. But is the fact that the creation takes place and isn't existent, does this make it truly established? The answer is no, because it was produced. And if it once it's produced and it exists at that moment of abiding, is it truly established? And the answer is no, because it was produced and it will cease, and all of these things rely upon are dependent upon other things. So the subject, the five aggregates, is necessarily not truly established. And that's Ganda.
Yeah.
So this type of analysis, when one utilizes correct signs to come to the conclusion of something, is called inferential prime cognition or inferential valid cognition.
다 제바서 걔는 가서 제바서 다 치드 사바인들에 대고 가버려서 제바 가서 줄 뭐요 와서 다다솔도 와서 다다솔 네발 다지지네 제비당 겐시드 가래 놓고서 최샤가 다도 와서 최찬도 대용도 제비이나 이미 다주 와서 겐시이나 겐시 다요 다들라 때네 다다가 겐시 임바다 제비 임바 시도도 미 통고 말스 다들라 때네 셰비 로들 제발로 그랬어.
So for those who are new, you hear inferential cognition or inferential valid cognition, and it might seem like a difficult word to understand, but it really isn't. This is something that we utilize all the time. A doctor, for instance, has to rely upon machines, has to rely upon all of these tests and analysis in order to make a diagnosis. He or she is not able to just suddenly understand what is wrong with you. He or she has to take tests and use machines, and then they can determine whether you have tuberculosis or you have cancer or you have some of these other kinds of diseases. But these are all reliant upon a correct sign, reliant upon the analysis that he or she engaged in to come up with the diagnosis. So in this case, this is also inferential prime cognition because it is valid and it is incontrovertible, but it relied upon correct signs and it was not directly cognized.
다 본보가 대바 마루바 담은 가서 미기 통도 말에 원송 셰도 말에서 담보 제바가 셰고르스 제바가 셰고들에 주센라 때네 셰고르스 주센 워데 주센 뭐고야 요르스.
So there are those things that we cannot have a direct perception of instantly. There are those things that we have to rely upon reason and analysis and a correct sign to come to a conclusion. And these things are called, this conclusion is arrived at through the use of inference, is arrived at through the use of inference. And this inference is brought about through relying upon a correct sign and through analysis. So once one has a correct sign, analysis, then he or she can arrive at inferential prime cognition, which is in the category of valid cognition.
다 주센이 봐도 뭐버 란림 매지시 주센 그걸 인식된거로 인식 안게 주주시고로도 number 49 봐.
So number 49.
인식 자질로수다.
Number 49 says a thing is not produced from itself, nor from another, also not from both, nor causelessly either. Thus it does not exist inherently by way of its own entity.
What Jula Joba doji zimi dances, what is Jula Jebashine, and Jeba Shebuguna de Bama Druba Ribate, Jula Joba doji zimi dances, what they then was, Marba?
The Geshe Lharampa.
Oh, Jula Joba doji zimi dances, Jo, Debala Jebuguna de Bama Druba, Jula Jebuguna de Madruba Druba. ngola jebe gun deba ma do du chu song yu war ta song ma song ma do dan den san di gre Bana ngoburan le machi jen le karsa ngoburan le machi jen da ni ga le jami
Dile labu.
jume le mi ti sher ngoni jira ji mes ngoburan le machi sin dan de so da
The yabu.
da nga tu duje ngalo chewares duje ngalo debe yin sa chewares jole chewares ane jole cheware de ane dale chewa yo mares jen le chewa yo mares nika le chewa yo mares jume le chewa yo mares te so da dema maru bares ane tsawa sheron go le dale mai jen le mi ni le mai jume mi ngobu ganda kana chewa na yo mai ngo oma tsawa sheron go de dan de chi bares ta ane dale mai duje ngalo dale ma chi bares marba bana duje ngalo bana nga tu matu no tu ngalo dale chi ga mares dale chewa khelen kan shiri tangchen bares tangchen ba tangchen ba ge ane duje zunga dale che bares matu dale che bares dale kan de che basna matu si joro wa si de nalu le nyugo ngobu yo ares mi ma thong bare ma tu de nalu le nyugo ngobu yo ares je nalu le nyugo ngobu yo ba de anu ko kale ya de ngoro ma tu sabe nalu le nyugo ngobu ji men ngobu ga ba de yo ares ane si ge dus nyugo ngobu yo ares tangchen de tangchen wa jugu du debu de yebe gune chewa dale chewas kelen shiri tangchen bares ale ti re loda.
So a thing is not produced from itself, nor from another, also not from both, nor causelessly either. Thus it does not exist inherently by way of its own entity. So a thing is not produced from itself. So there is not anything within this that produces it. It would be impossible for a thing to produce itself. Anything that is a compound has arisal, has abiding, and has cessation. So this actual compound arisal takes place through various facets or factors. So we can't say that it is produced from itself. In an ancient Indian tradition called the Samkhya school, believed that every cause had the result within it. So the Samkhya school believed that the enumerators is called in English. The enumerators believe that within a seed, for instance, the flower was already inside of it. So the cause had its result already abiding within it. This is a refutation of basically that view that inherently they believe that there is a self that inherently exists, because the belief is that the cause is the effect is within the cause at all times. So this is a view of the Samkhya school or the enumerator school, and the refutation of that. So a thing is not produced from itself because it relies upon factors, or from another, meaning that there is not an outside source that makes it inherently exist. And you can't say that it's, from both either. And that's the whole explanation Rinpoche gave.
Ta tangchen ba ge duje ngalo demba tu bares demba tu chewa yo ares demba tu chewa yo jusen kares na ju tu so yo gune chewa yimbe she dale chewa yimbe she ku jusen tu ko da dale chewa yin ta demba tu chewa yo ares rangon tu chewa yo ares lo deres.
So the Samkhya school, there are the enumerators, believe that all phenomena truly exists because within it, its cause is present. So there has always been the cause and the effect and so forth present in all phenomena. So this is their reason for stating that things are truly established.
Ko san mo da kamba nalu me yo na kamba shilu mo matön ya yo ro kamba nalu me me na shilu mo matön ya yo maro kamba nalu me me na kamba shilu mo matön ya mudwas Seed nalu nyungu yuares yene tyon ma me na ka ba tyon yuares sig nalu nyungu hobu yuares kid la do yuares
ya je suralan na sapo yomari
sabe yoro sabe sing sabe nalu shin dong hobu yuares mi tonggo mares ko je yuares jibuda de yin zan de ba dubares.
So the belief is that, for instance, in a seed, there's an entire tree inside of this seed that one just can't see at that point, and then this seed has the ability to sprout. And there's a tree, but the belief is that the tree is already there, the enumerator's school.
Then the Shajin do I get that could Tajan Kagoris. Then Lambuchi Joa Jalan you can get enter you, the Lambuchi Joa Jalan Nuba Jayoroa. And Chile. Launching Joa Jalan Nuba Jayona and launching Jayus. US Logrota.
Then the Lamchen.
Lambuchi Jay Joalan enter the Zagon Chima,
Gala.
and Zagon Lambuchi Jayobatas.
Then the Garish, the Yanja, Selpo Lapgo. Then Gangin Sena Gamange Tonsung in a debts Jason.
Launching Joa Jalan Nuba Jayo. Georgia. And the Jiggy born the land, born Casa, Alabama, born element 100 C. You can Juro.
Lesser.
Troma, launching Joa Jalan Nuba Jayo can enter Juro.
Lesser.
What the Zagon to Chimaina? The gun language US language.
So Shanti Deva then comes back and says, okay, if there is an ant standing on top of a piece of grass, and in that ant's previous life, he or she was an elephant, and there were 100 elephant rebirths previously, are you meaning to tell me there are 100 elephants standing on a blade of grass?
Then the Zagan Dula and the Zagan language Jayo.
So are there 100 elephants standing on a blade of grass?
And the Lamb Zajigan launching Jade to the best.
So one elephant couldn't stand on a blade of grass.
What the Shantin do a transit.
So Shanti Deva stated this.
What the Jesus, that the Gishe would do
The Pama.
Zasu Zana launching Jang Hansu Maton Yodushi, the sit Transin Shulian, Trutijus and Rangache. Transin Chuno the Shu Pajuna is Churibachan Mudujota. Zazungo launching Jakane.
So the Shanti Deva stated that the enumerators speak of absurd things like a donkey. How could you say things that are so absurd, such as believing 100 elephants could stand on a piece of grass?
What this going to do?
So it's very similar to this. The Tanda, the Juchi.
Yeah, okay. Overall, which is what the Payaga get to Deva Maru, Dalit Mache. Dalai oyo mares. Dalai just again the transgender marva. You do the reviews there. You do the Yabuguni Jotal Dalai. You do the Yenicheva Yinza, Demba do you are. Demba do you are.
So the first one, the subject, the 5 aggregates, are not born from themselves. So here, this is a refutation of the enumerator school, basically stating the impossibility with various reasons that things are not produced from themselves. So this is not stating that this is not a qualified reason for its true establishment.
Jenle Jawa se Teresa, Jenle Jawa Kelang Mabuyoris, Naba Sanji Trotamo, Jeganane, Oman Tanjo Amatu, Ranjuba, Senzamba, Shirama, Dudaba Tusuke, Jenle Jawa Kelangris, Ranga Seni Juba Kelangris, Ranga Seni Juba, Rajin Juba Kelangris, Marba.
The Yanjeris, the Umapash, the Samsampa, the Tamche, the Xian, Jengi, Jewa.
Jenle Jawa Sakarana, Rang Seni Jubi Jenle, Omar Tanjo Rang Seni Juba Kelang Mare, Rajuba Menshik Rang Seni Juba Kelang, Rangun Juba, Rajin Juba, Rang Seni Juba Kelang, Rang Seni Jubi Jenle Jawa de la Jenle Jawas. Jenja Kelang, the Rajuba, Senzamba, Shirama, Dudaba Shiruba Yunzu, Piji Jiroda.
So there, as far as the production of other, there are many beliefs of the lack of beliefs of true establishment within even the Buddhist tenet systems. We can find not in the middle way consequence school, not in the Madhyamika Prasangika, the highest view, but you can find in the middle way autonomy school, the mind-only school, or the Chittamantran school it's called, or the Satrantika school or Sutra school, and the Vibhashika school or the Great Exposition school. We can find production of other, as well as in non-Buddhist traditions. So we can find this second thing that is being refuted in actual Buddhist and non-Buddhist texts.
달마 라지 주바 뜻지 마시는 데서만 다 라지 주바 오마 탄주가 그 라지 주바 킬래 그랬어 답은 취수 아유 유여서 봐 오마 탄주 라지 마 주바 킬래 그랬어 라주 보면 제 라지 주서 되었어 안에 취도 조금가 유여비 취도 간대랬어 루용 그 파자비 요바래 그런건 제 주버렸어 말이야 루용 도비 따상 루용 그 잡아 매기 따상 따상도 요버렸어 매기 따상도 루용 그 자상도 요버렸어 말이야 루용 그 잡아 도비용 그 잡아 오마 탄주 도비용 그 자상도 요버렸어 오마 라주비 도비용 그 파자 유 그런건 주니 투레스 니 투 유 그런 원에 요아래 루용 그 파자바 니 투레스 니 투 인사랑은 줘 요아래 오마 탄주 루용 자 only 자장레마도 그런 건 뒤줘요 말이스 그런 건 줘 요소는 장원을 줘 봐. 라주 매지 되겠네.
So one difference in the middle way consequence school, which is called the Madhyamika Prasangika school, and the middle way autonomy school, which is the Madhyamika Svatantrika school, which also has two divisions. The one key difference is the middle way consequence school, the highest school, Prasangikas, believe that there is no nature from the side of the thing that is being named or imputed. The object is present, then one nominally designates it as this or that, but it has no inherent existence from its own side of this or that. Its sole dependence is upon a naming that takes place. So that's the highest view. The middle way autonomy school, which is the school just under the Prasangika school, or the consequence school's belief that it takes both a nominal designation and a consciousness apprehending it, as well as the agent object, as the object having some sort of essence from its own side. But its essence cannot be completed until the nominal designation or the apprehension takes place. So the middle way autonomy school feels that there is a relationship between agent and object in a way that the object does not come into being and cannot be named without the agent, and the agent depends upon the object. So there is a relationship, according to the autonomy school, in that way, in which they state that things have some sort of nature from their own side, but it needs to have an apprehender to completely bring it into existence as this or that.
답은 나가서 아이스야드 강갈 두어서 I am 아이스야드 두어서 아이드 간대 요아르스 아이드 봄봉아 투발 마드바랑 원의 투발에 루용게 자선르스나 오만 단조하게 아이스야드 봄봉아 투발 뛰네 루이바 따장을 마도 그런 거는 줘요 말이스 라주바게 네 아이스야데 루용하고 봐자 그런 거네 요아르스 루용 니토랑 거는 줘버려서 그런 거는 요아르스 루용거 다 니토레스.
So when we look at the five aggregates themselves, the middle way consequence school feels that the five aggregates come into being through a series of dependents. The five aggregates come into being and they form a collection. This collection is then nominally designated as this or that. It is imputed as this or that, but has no inherent nature or true establishment from its own side whatsoever. The middle way autonomy school believes that the five aggregates have some sort of essence themselves, but also depend upon the imputation or the nominal designation, rely upon the apprehender to apprehend the object and bring the object into being. So the apprehender apprehends the object itself is apprehended and then comes into being as this or that once the apprehender decides what this or that is. So the middle way consequence school does not feel that that's accurate. They feel that it relies solely upon the nominal designation and there is no essence more than the naming itself.
보문가 초발라 뛰네 주바 근갈로 지바로 왔어. 보문가 초발라 뛰네 안 가실 제압사나도 가 머를 미르도
So when we use this formula, we can use it with all different types of people. For instance, Jeff, Jeff's 5 aggregates. We see Jeff, we're naming him Jeff, but Jeff is just named independence upon these aggregates and forms and so forth that are coming together, and then one says there's Jeff, or then one says there's John, or then one says there's Ted, etc., etc., etc. But there is no Jeff exclusive of that collection that came into being and then was named. There is no inherently existent soul or inherently existent Jeff that's exclusive from that naming.
Jala da karina ya den ku da ju chuzong la tue ne mi ge da zang yo ba sha da ro an ka ji le nao du san da ka ji le khang ba san da mi ge da zang ri ma be.
It doesn't matter what thing we use as an example. It doesn't matter if we use a house or an airplane or a car or any type of phenomena, anything that is a collection, which is everything. We can then come up with the same conclusion that is just imputed. There is no true inherent existence from its own side. It is not truly established. It dependently originates, and because of this, it has no inherent nature from its own side.
Taoma tanju nga de ane pomo nga chuzong le den da zang res pomo rang ngon yo ma res rang ngon ma du res rang ju ba ma chi rang ngon ju ba yo res rang ngon ju lu yong ga ni chu res.
So the autonomy school believes in a nature of some sort from the side of the object that's being apprehended, whereas the Prasangika school, consequence school, does not believe that the object being apprehended has any sort of inherent existence or nature other than what it is named by the apprehender.
Da rang ngon ju ba yo so de ane pa na ma tu de rang ngon ju ba res ma tu ge si de rang ngon ju ba res rang ngon ju bi ju yen le rang ngon ju bi de bu yen je ba res yen le ji was ma be rang ngon ju bi ju yen le rang ngon ju bi de bu yen je wa khin le yen le ji was rang ju ba san sang ba shi da ma do de ba shi ri ba ga khin le was.
So we can find in the schools below Prasangika, again, the Middle Way Autonomy School, the Autonomy School leaning towards the Sutra School, the Autonomy School leaning towards the Mind-Only School, the Mind-Only School, the Sutra School, and the Great Exposition School, and non-Buddhist traditions. We can find, in a sense, production from other, in a way, and some more coarse than others, coarse views than others.
다 녀고 라주바 매치 되게 녀고 담바도 랑원 주바레스 랑원 주비 주생 가르스나 랑게 체니 주비 주젠레 랑게 체니 주비 데비젠 지와 임베시스 어디서
Yeah, just sort of. The cheka shingi.
녀고 랑원 주비 지와 요아레스 랑원 주비 지와 요데 네 랑원 주비 주젠레 데비젠 지와 임베시스 젠레 지와스 매젠레 매젠 지와 ngaso pama yen le bugu yen ji wan dos bugu le ta de amal ji wan dos bugu da amani ta de ro ta de ma ba bugu da amal ta de ro ta de amal ji bro pal ji bro den na ji nyogo de rang ge chen ji ju ju yen le ji ba res rang ge chen ji ju ju yen le ji ba yin za rang ngon ju ji yo res ra ju ba me chi ju chen de res.
So the reason that the autonomy school asserts that a sprout, for instance, has some sort of nature from its own side. The reason being is that they state that the potential for it to be a sprout is there, and it doesn't turn into anything but a sprout. So the Middle Way Autonomy School's assertion is that it has to have some nature of it from its own side in order for it to be this or that, because it is clearly named this or that.
Da le jiwa da yen le jiwa se ga kwa ya ba cha zan ni ga le ji sen le la bu ro da da le jiwa re ni ga le jiwa ni ga jiwa ken le ga de ga sen je bu ba re je bu ba ma na ba jin chu ji de ge ji mu de jen da na sa las war na sil de ne jen ga ga do shi ru ba dulu ma go ba ji ma na ba chu ji ge wo de du je du ga lo. So the
Jains in India, the Jain tradition, and the tradition where a lot of times they don't wear any clothes, they run around India and even in Dharamsala naked completely, believe that there is a production from both. And we can very easily refute that because we've just refuted the production from self, and we've just refuted the production from other. Because we know that it is not produced from itself, it's dependent upon a collection, and it's not produced from other, meaning there is no other inherently existent, truly established thing that brings it into being. So once we have refuted both of these things, then we have to refute that it was brought into being from both. Because if it wasn't brought into being from A or B, you can't put A and B together and then say it was produced by that. So that's how it is refuted in that particular case. So the refutation here is that it is not inherently produced from self, other, or both.
What the Jain tradition the ngobna rajin chewa yuares. Jusen karas nigal chewa yimbe ku jusen to ko deres. Dale chewa yin, Jain le chewa yin za rangon rubi chewa yuares.
So the reason that the Jains give for it being from both is because they state that there is a little of a production of itself and a little of a production from other, and then these two things make it inherently exist, make it truly established. But we've already refuted the prior two, so it's impossible for the third to be relevant. Or possible. It's impossible for it to be possible.
Ta shere ba jamben se ke jo jamben ba de jo ngama yo mare shema yo mare tsendel gazi ji bu jona daga de ma do chue ji go ba ke yo mare ji ba ta ku jumel ji o ke na go ro da shere ba jamben ba de ge ane luje ngalo raji ju be jo yo ares ye be jusen gares na jumel ji wa imbe se ko jume bal ji ares bana Tsema nomu duwa nga zuken yo maris, ju yo maris, kuru nomu chawaris. Bing riri renduwa, bing riri di zuken yo maris, ju mebal chawaris. Ane pingal dani tsunta momu duwa, pinga, ki jibu duwa. Tsunta nga yo maris, ju yo maris, ju mele shung waris. Di yin sonsa deba dhubi jo yo waris, dilla waris ko.
Then Pama, Mazam Shah, Console. So there's a school also, within India that believes that things are causeless, that there is no last or previous or future life. There are none of these things. None of these exist. Things are not caused. And they give examples like, look at a piece of sand. A piece of sand wasn't caused by anything, and that sand doesn't produce anything. A peacock has all of these beautiful colors. Did you see anyone paint it? So they come with all of these conclusions, and they state that things are just how they are, and they are causeless. There has not been a cause. They just exist in that way, and they don't go beyond that as an explanation. That is their assertion, and this is their reason for stating that these things are causeless, are not, where does it say in here? It states... let me just read it to you. A thing is not produced from itself. Here it says, nor causelessly either. So nor causelessly either refers, is the refutation of the nihilist. The nihilists who believe that anything goes and there is no karma and effects and there's no nothing that produces anything.
Jumel Joe Kellan Jambe Baris, Jambe Badege, Central Gazi Jibuna dear Madu Seshama Pengil, Chujin Gubaka Marjivata, Trun Zebabas, Central Gazi Jibun.
So the nihilists believe that it doesn't matter what you do, you can do anything that you want to do in this life. There is no future, there is no cause, it's all causeless. Anything goes, whatever you feel like doing, go ahead. They say when you die, there's no future life, so none of this matters. There's no past life either. Whatever is pleasant for you in this life, go for it. So these are called those who look for bliss in this life. The bliss seek, this life bliss seekers, and those who are just looking for things to make them feel good in this life.
Ngomoloduke Tawashiro Ngongotelo Hotelers, Dalai Mai, Yenemi, Nilemai, Jumemis, Ngongotel Telego, Tawashiro Ngongotelo.
In the root wisdom text by Nagarjuna, it's called the Mulya Madhyamika Karika in Sanskrit. The Mulya Madhyamika Karika, Nagarjuna states this very thing, that things are not produced from self, other, both, or causeless.
Pomonga Chuis and then Digadua, Da Chuis and Cheomaro, Pomonga Chuis, Demotrubicio Mente, Dalejo, my Gelejo, my Nicalejo, my Jumelejo, my ambitious Jusenko, that Jusen
So you could say, for instance, the subject, the five aggregates are not truly existent. Why are they not truly existent? Because they're not produced from self, they're not produced from other, they're not produced from both, and they're not causeless. So here's a reason stating the reason for its lack of true existence, or lack of true establishment.
What the Dalai the jumping to a good was, Karsa Tanjing to a good, take a Tanjenka waters, Jele Maisa the Rajuba, Senzamba, Dodeba, Shiriba Tanjika waters, the Sundoba was.
So those other schools below the Middle Way Consequent School, the Middle Way Autonomists, the Mind Only, the Sutra schools, and the Great Exposition schools do have production of other in certain ways you can find.
You
can see even in Dharamsala the Jains who believe that it's produced from both. And the ones, the causeless, refute the nihilists. So if you slowly think about these things and think about these in a gradual fashion, you'll be able to understand them and realize them. If you slowly think about these things, you will slowly understand them. So you can find the Umarinchen Chenwa, you can find in all of these texts the same sort of thing where it states that things are not produced from self, other, both, or causeless. You can find this in the Mulya Madhyamika Karika by Nagarjuna. You can find it in this Atisha's text, The Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, and various other scriptures. You can find these explanations given by Chandrakirti and the Madhyamika Avatar and so forth. So when we speak of this production itself and the lack of production, we're not speaking of the production isn't existent. We're speaking of the lack of true establishment of the production. Things are not truly established because they are produced from themselves. So we refute that. We refute the fact that they are produced from others, so they cannot be inherently existent or truly established. They are not produced from both, so they cannot be truly existent or truly established, and they are not causeless. So the whole point of this meaning is that when it says here that they, a thing is not produced from itself, something existent cannot be produced. In the previous line, it doesn't mean in the literal sense it's not produced, because that would be a nihilistic view. The meaning is it's not inherently, it is not truly established. It is produced in an inherent, exclusive manner.
Jajin dan god demi god manzin gores manzin dule hay ombo jajin lan doje yors doje doje de soje yoro ji ni sonje yoro wa what the jajin go doje chu son gores 하용 뭐 자진 도제데 안도 수용들래 demigod 그때는 컴바도 그런 걸로 누워서 매버서 거스 도지 재미 된시 되게 안에 무투슈 매 무투슈서 그러다 안에 도바 뭐 까는 거스 도지 재미 된시 자진 그 도제든 잡어스
네 jutsun gar
하용 뭐 자진 미 거사 자진도 참바
the Shiva
시바
Wambo
하용 뭐 자진을 거사 자진
Wambo is Shiva
시바서
Shankarji
말 사이 잡아주로 잡어 사용 뭐 자진
Brahma
바마 참발로 그러 사지 라유를 마페 온디 바마다 자진이게 이유는 사지 마페 용으로 와 사용 뭐 자진스 라이 잡아주어스 라이 잡아주어 바만 잡으다 자진스 자진 글란 도주어 도지 녀바 쳐요어스 도지들 수지니 송진도와 왔다 안다도 왔다 송바레스 자진 도지들 하마이다 마투비세 안에 자진 도진도 쉬용도 하마이게 천차당 강가 매버서는 거스 자진 도진 녀바 쳐요로다 된나지 땅다도 자진 도진 라버레스 무드슈 뭐 장진 종도 그래 어야 라주 메시 까 그래 yeah,
Okay. So there's a particular god who has, this is compared to, I don't know the exact name in English, but there's a god who yields Vajra. And the Vajra has the ability, there's a story that this Vajra was thrown and was able to destroy a particular war within the demigod's region and completely eradicate and destroy. And this type of analysis is compared to it because it leaves out no room for not error, but it leaves no room for misunderstanding because it covers all bases. When it says produced from itself another, both are causeless. This covers every single possibility, so it completely eradicates the mistaken notions. So it's compared to the ability that this particular deity had to eradicate an entire war. So it's just showing the greatness of this analysis.
Wa densi del jola joba doji zemi densi busha mil te yoaris doji stel rowa ha yong bo jajin doji yoaris den yoba che yoaris hama yi da ma tu ondu hama yi se ya choncha me ba zuya hama yi khamba me ba zuya wodan yoba che yoaris den na ji ta anda del suju yoba de ge trajen ka gre raju ba me che ka gre.
So just like this special Vajra had the ability to destroy the foes that he was up against in order to completely eradicate the houses, eradicate everything that was in the land that was causing obstructions or that was being fought over. Likewise, these four truths, these four things, something is not produced from self, from other, from both, or causeless, acts as an opponent to these schools, such as the Samkhya school, or the Middle Way autonomy school, or the Jain tradition, or the nihilists. So these things basically refute all of the mistaken views that have been passed down through various Indian traditions, Indian Hindu traditions. So it's basically a refutation of, to prove that the view is mistaken, and not just saying it's mistaken for the sake of saying it is. There's a proof that it is a mistaken view.
So in
the future, we'll keep explaining this and explaining it again and again, and hopefully you will understand it. So usually at 11:15 we do meditation, but today it went a little longer. there's not much time. So what do folks want to do? Do we want to do a short meditation? Because I know that all the students were requesting meditation. So the Getru Tamche, the requesting Gom Jabgu. So maybe today we'll skip the meditation and let's just do question and answer. So actually meditation, as I was stating before, isn't this. It means familiarization. So the fact that we sat in this class and we thought about reasons for this or for that means that we've been meditating while we're here in this class.